Okay.
Yeah. I'll let you know when it comes up.
All right.
I mean, hopefully it's just going to like kind of flash up on your YouTube.
Yeah.
Maybe if you open up your YouTube as well.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I'll do that. And I'll just take it off the screen so it doesn't do the sound feedback where it gets all uplift.
Yeah. So it still hasn't come up.
Spell today?
Mm-hmm.
Upliftment.
You got this, Laura.
UP. Hold on. Upliftment.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on a sec. Okay.
No worries. So glad you got your YouTube back. I really prayed for you.
Yeah, I wish I could get my Facebook back, but I'm just glad that I got something.
Yeah. Maybe I'll ask my friend Brittany if she can help you get your YouTube back, your Facebook back.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's no harm asking her, is there?
Right.
Yeah.
So it says I'm spelling it right, but it's showing the squiggle like I'm not spelling it right.
Well, it might not know it because it's an unusual word, isn't it? It's just UPLIFTMENT, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just, yeah, it just doesn't know. Discombobulating it.
Right. UPLIFTMENT. Spiritual upliftment with Jen. And 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗶𝗏𝗏 and Laura. Okay. Woo! Always feels like the first time. I don't know why.
Oh.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
The meeting is being live streamed. Got it. Oh, we're live. No.
Yes.
Oh, we're live. Great.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's 𝗤𝘂𝗏𝗏𝗏 Eisenhower. I'm joined today by Jen McCarty, just such an incredible woman, friend, goddess, just divine feminine, everything. Really bringing in the twin flame codes as well. She's put out so much incredible material. She has had such a presence on social media, really building, I guess the word is following, but she doesn't necessarily see it that way. I mean, it's all about community. It's all about activation and unification and unity consciousness. But yeah, I've known her for years and we've done a lot of roundtables together and really excited to just have a one-on-one with you today, particularly after the powerful eclipse last night. And you've done some interesting projects lately as well. And just want to hear from you and just some updates and then we'll dive into some questions. Thank you for being here with me today.
That's amazing. And Laura, do you have the link there? Because I'd love to just post it onto my community because there's so many people that are wanting to come and join us. But if I go onto your YouTube, it's not coming up. So I'm wondering if you can get the link, put it in the chat box and I can whack it up on.
Yeah, I'll work on that while you share it. Okay.
Excellent. So thank you so much. It's absolutely amazing to be here. And I'm so honored to be with my soul sister, Laura. And it's really beautiful that we can like have this one-on-one time. We're often quite, part of a divine feminine round tables, which are always absolutely amazing. And so many people in our community get so much from the round tables. Like the amount of people that I meet on marches and protests and stuff like that come up to me and say, oh, Jen, I met you through the round table and please keep doing them. Like you've got absolutely no idea how healing it is for us to hear a group of awake women speaking with different tones, different vibrations, but somehow it's the same message, similar message that's very, very much holding everyone through these times, and I think that a lot of us have been in huge kind of like training ground for these times, haven't we? When I look back on my life, it was all to get me to this place now. And I wouldn't change it, even though it's, because it is what it is, isn't it? I mean, obviously I would change certain elements. I don't want anyone to get harmed, but it's what we signed up for. Like we knew what we were coming into. We're coming into, like revert the matrix back into its original Christic formation. And it's been so hugely manipulated for so long that I always just think, oh my God, you're so brave. Like, I have so much respect for humanity. I have so much love and respect for my brothers and sisters, because I just think you're so freaking brave for coming back here to the shit show. Do you know what I mean? Like the universal shit show on steroids. And it's like we all come back, we're all like, oh, gun ho, let's get back to 3D duality.
It's very jarring a lot of mornings, just waking up and just feeling into it. And I mean, it's been these dark cabal forces have been around for, by the way, I put it in the chat, the YouTube
Thank
link.
you, darling. I'm just going to now
on my
quickly
page on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly say, while you're sharing, I'm going to quickly share this.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been there, and now it's way more obvious than ever. But there's so many casualties in this awakening process. But at the same time, there's no real death, and we're multidimensional, and we're thinning the veils between life and death through breaking through the fences and barriers that keep us looping in this 3D, when this is not a 3D planet. It's so much more multidimensional, goddess, 13 dimensional and beyond, taking us to the 0-point unified field in order to purify the elementals within ourselves and on the planet, which is going to be very inhospitable to parasitic forces. So I kind of see that that's where we're at. It's getting more inhospitable. So that's why they're accelerating all the stuff that they're throwing at us in sort of a last ditch effort. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I'm totally getting visions as you're speaking. It's like we're moving out of a particular density, and within that density, it kind of could stick, you know, the atrocities and stuff like that, the programming. But now, because of what's going on with the shift in the consciousness and whatever's going on, it's like it's rising, the density is rising, and so that lower frequency energy can't stick, and it's just kind of like, and that's why it looks so messy, and it's like a drowning rat. It's so embarrassing, isn't it, like to kind of like to watch.
Yes. Just looking at news headlines and just the obsession. Like sometimes I check in every once in a while, like what is, I guess you could call it mainstream culture putting their attention on, and it just boggles my mind where it still is at. It hasn't really evolved much. It's still the same kind of stuff.
Devolved.
Yeah, and it right, and it's just amazing to me. And these people with so much wealth that are really in the environments of where the most horrific crimes are taking place really aren't stepping up and doing a whole lot. The numbers are very small, and that's what's been, I guess, surprising. That I think people are so afraid of the persecution, when I just want those that are compromised or in Hollywood or the political realms that might feel blackmailed to know that there's love and forgiveness. Just come clean, you know, for the sake of the children, for the sake of doing what's right for the planet. Don't be afraid that people are going to be throwing stones at you because you had any involvement. I mean, maybe some people would, but there's enough of us that will support and embrace taking the stand and taking the position to be similar to a whistleblower, somebody who's saying, I'm not participating anymore. I was blackmailed. I
was set up.
Yeah. And a few have come forward, but I'm surprised it hasn't created more of a chain reaction. Maybe, we'll kind of see where that goes. But yeah, and then, you know, of course, death threats and stuff like that. But we're really in the know about their tactics because they make it very obvious when they so-called suicide somebody. And I know we got to be careful and talk in code a bit. But before we went live, you were talking about, you know, what's going on in other countries and what we're seeing in other countries. You want to kind of take us into what your thoughts were on that? And we'll just kind of be careful how we word things.
Yeah. Well, just I think, you know, what's going on in Austria at the moment. I'm sure you're aware of what's going on in Austria. Have you been following that at all?
I've been hearing about some of the ways to get people coerced into getting the, you know what.
Okay, yeah. So things are ramping up in certain parts of Europe and also in Australia. And I just think it's very, very important. I mean, I don't think there's anyone on this call that isn't going to be red-pilled up to the absolute hilt. Do you know what I mean? But even the red-pilled of us can do with a bit of a spiritual boost, couldn't we? You know, and I think that it's really time for us to hold the line. And this has been the theme in most of my lives recently. Like, this is what we're born for. Like, we came for this. We're equipped, like spiritually coded for this time. And so this is a test, isn't it? This is absolutely a test of our stabilization. And my feeling is that what the world needs is lighthouses, human lighthouses that have that higher perspective, that have that galactic perspective, that can offer comfort and explanations to people that are quite locked in the 3D. And what we really need is more people to activate as lighthouses, and so they can be seen. And so this is a lot to do with the throat chakra, and I know you talk a lot about the throat chakra, and I think this has been what's really been going on in this particular time period of transformation, is that so many of us starseeds have had lifetimes of being horrifically persecuted, like just unfathomably persecuted, and it's all to do with this area where a lot of the persecution took place. And so a lot of us have kind of like terror about speaking our truth, and I think we need to call that out, and that's okay. There's a reason, there's a context why you're terrified to speak your truth. But my motto is, speak your truth even if your voice wobbles.
I love that. And I definitely can feel it at times in my throat chakra. Sometimes I rush to get things out, and I'm not intentionally talking fast. Sometimes things come through so quickly that I just can't help it. I try and catch myself.
I'm totally like that too.
Yeah, and I just put essential oils and I just try and ground it. And I definitely know it's because of being silenced. And here we are in this particular era, and there's censorship. But yeah, the persecution or the death pictures or any kind of memories of speaking in the past, because words of power, I mean, the whole magician archetype has to do with our thoughts and our words and how they create reality. And that's why mind control and social engineering has been the tactic used in order to infect that part of us. So we speak the propaganda or spread the mind viruses, which is just as contagious as spreading love and truth, because that frequency shatters, to me, the dark technologies and begins to loosen up the blockages, the traumas. And if we can just keep breathing through it, that's what they're most threatened by. And because the war has changed to sort of the war on consciousness through social media, indoctrination in school systems, and just the general narratives being steered in the fake news and media, this is where we can really do a lot of, work on ourselves. And do you feel like we're in kind of a race against time, though, when you look at just, reaching critical mass? You've posted a bit about that. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned something also about the Holy Grail and the Thames, if you want to just cover some of those themes.
Yes. Well, I mean, I had a very, very powerful vision just as I was going to sleep the other night, and I saw, and this is to do with the work that I've done on my own self, and it's to do with working with the Magdalene energy, specifically working with the Magdalene energy. And this is about becoming an embodiment and a carrier of the flame. I'm an embodiment of the Magdalene flame. And that is very, very deep work that over thousands and thousands of lifetimes and what have you, we've arrived at this place. So from this place of the awakened divine feminine holding the Magdalene flame, I was guided on a quest, and I was guided actually by the fairy realm, because the fairy realm are very, very industrious, and even that they've been given a bad rap on the 3D, but they're hardcore. They really, really get the job done, like on a 4D, 5D spiritual level, like you want them on your team. So anyway, so all the fairies came and met me. And it was at a moment where I connected with my twin flame on the physical plane. And so we went back to that time where I'd connected with my twin flame, and he put this mala around my neck, this beautiful rose mala, like flower mala around my neck. And then through that gesture, it opened up a fairy portal, and all these fairies came kind of like fluttering out of the trees or whatever. And they kind of said, follow me, follow us. And then I followed them. And then I found myself going down like just underground basically, and I found myself in these underground tunnels, and the tunnels were made of crystals. They were made of quartz crystals, and I was like moving through the tunnels, and as I was walking through the tunnel, they said to me, "You're carrying the Holy Grail, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I am." And I knew I was carrying the Holy Grail, and they said, "We are placing the Holy Grail into a new resting place." And there was a lot of information coming through about Glastonbury, and about how the fact that there'd been a little bit of a tweak, there'd been a little bit of a sort of like a shift, because it's very close to Glastonbury, but it's just on a slightly different point, if you know what I mean. So just explaining all this stuff about the heart chakra, and about how there was a shift taking place. But as I was walking along, they were giving me a lot of information, and they were saying this wouldn't be happening unless that humanity had reached critical mass. And this is a vibrational quest which was connected to your own personal evolution and humanity arriving at critical mass. Do you know what I mean? So had humanity not have reached that critical mass, I would not have had that experience. That's what they were saying. So as I was moving through these underground tunnels, and I was carrying the Holy Grail, we came to this very, very large room. And I realized I was literally directly underneath the Thames, the River Thames. And then they guided me to a throne, and they said, and then I was wearing this beautiful like golden outfit, and then they said, sit on the throne. And then my twin flame, he was sitting on the other throne, and it was like and they were like basically saying like there was this element of king and queen of the fairies going on. That was the vibration that I really, really felt, that we were kind of like embodying that energy of the king and queen of the fairies. And then they said to me, please place the Holy Grail in between the both of you. And so I placed the Holy Grail between us, and then all of a sudden it set alight, and this beautiful flame just started sort of like encompassing the Grail. And then all of a sudden this kind of like spiral of water started pouring from the center of the chalice, and I was being shown that it was the 𝗍𝗲𝗄𝗃, it was the sacred union, it was the beautiful divine union of the masculine and feminine energies. There was something was going on with that. And then I was guided to template that, the Holy Grail and the fire and the water, on all of the sacred sites, predominantly Egypt. There was a lot of work going on with Egypt, because as per my guidance, that's like the mother portal on the earth. And so there was a huge amount of work to do with templating these codes in Egypt. And then I had an experience of it going around all the sacred sites, and it was also connected to the 144,000. And there was this element of arrival for the 144,000, that this was like a successful vibrational quest, which was going to have a knock-on effect to the 144,000. So it was a lot was being kind of like transmitted and downloaded, and there was a lot more than that, but that's what I can kind of like retain.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
How
cool.
did that land with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been feeling an energetic shift, and I mean, I'm working energy in a different way that I used to. There's a lot that I'm still trying to bounce back from, that I thought I'd be able to bounce back from a little bit maybe quicker than it took, because I feel I was very close to being taken out. And I mean, we all have those experiences, close to death experiences, but this was such a long and drawn out targeting and dismantling of just everything that I've been trying to carry and do on a mission level, that I just been holding space to just get back to center. And and so it moves in different phases, and just having to be very, very honest with the process, and work through the emotions, and work through kind of the grief. There was a major spiritual attack. I think that was what made it almost one of the worst attacks I've ever gone through. Somebody wanted to do a trade with me, because I do astrology readings, and the person that did the trade turned real dark, and literally tried to, or it seemed to, cut the cord between me and source and the Christ energy and everything. And of course, you don't give people your power, and nobody can have it. But when you really confide in somebody, and you feel like you're vibing in a certain way, and you feel you can open your heart and soul, it's very dangerous if that person's not fully in possession of themselves, and they allow. So I learned, don't do trades with people. Maybe don't even ever get a reading again from anybody unless it's, somebody close to me like yourself but it's just, I know that I only have me to fall back on, and nobody can take that. But it really put me in a weird way for a while. So just as far as my own personal process and how it relates to the larger picture, because it's that micro macro thing. And I've been focused on hierogamic union and sacred union and the Magdalene flame and the 𝗍𝗵𝗍 since childhood. And I was very aware that this was a huge part of my mission, to bring that in and to go on a particular journey sort of into the underworlds and doing whatever kind of repair work, clearing inorganic entities from wormholes, and just doing a lot of stuff that like I didn't realize I was really doing, but I would check with myself and I realized I was doing it. And then it got confirmed when I went to a clairvoyant institute. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, that's, a lot of us do that. We don't realize that sometimes when we're not fully grounded, we're off doing like other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's always this, if I feel slammed or thrown off center, then I got to kind of just make sure that I'm working on myself to get back. And I have felt a shift recently. And I know it has a lot to do with the fact that we're moving into a 𝗑𝗨𝗃 season. So the fact that you had this experience and this event took place right before we're entering a 𝗑𝗨𝗃, which is the 13th sign ruled by the ether. It has to do with the corrections, the Sophionic corrections, and ultimately the Venus transits and the planetary grid network healing that you obviously are playing an immense role in, particularly living where you're living as well, and just you carrying the codes and being of the Magdalene flame. I felt a lot more, lightness, and I do a lot of like dream work. I take a lot of dream tea and
Dream
do my best to be, dream tea. It's like passion flower and rose petals, blue lotus. And I actually took a lot of that last night. Yes, I will. And it just kind of helps to bring consciousness into areas where we might be unconscious, like in our dream state, to work energy in those other dimensions in order to keep this energetic flow going so that all their attempts to sort of defeat us and exhaust us don't succeed. And they won't, because we're warriors. But I can see these attempts, but it's just like, just constantly just getting back up and feeling strengthened by the weakening forces, like realizing that nobody can take our power, nobody can destroy the truth, but there is a certain need to make sure that we're taking care of the physical vessel and giving ourselves enough rest in order to bounce back when an attack or some sort of undermining thing happens. So now that the whole planetary system and humanity is under a much more obvious assault and attack, even though some might not realize it, it's just interesting to be working these energies in this new kind of way. But I feel that the next couple of months are going to shift things in ways that are immense and incredible, that I wasn't feeling as strongly as I am lately. It wasn't that I doubted it or was in doom or gloom, but the density and the heaviness was so thick that it's like, okay, got to kind of step back, process through, breathe through, release as much as possible, not allow belief systems to go where these outside forces want them to go, because they do want to create a feeling of defeat. But so I've just been, working on the normal, typical, not normal, but just releasing what doesn't serve, doing the alchemical work, and staying in alignment with the divine blueprint and clearing out whatever wants to undermine that and creating boundaries to anything that wants to threaten it or try and destroy it. So I don't know if I said that very well, but
you did that. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. But one thing that I just wanted to say was that what happened was, this is so incredible. I got major goosebumps when you were speaking, because what I was shown was that as we activated the Holy Grail and the fire and the water, all of a sudden I was then shown that the fairies made a bridge to the moon, and it was like a fairy light bridge to the moon. And because I was guided to do a full moon manifestation, but I had loads of resistance because I felt like, oh, the moon's so nefarious and I can't work with the moon. So I had a lot of resistance, but it was very, very interesting. So I couldn't promote it. I couldn't get behind this offering that my team were like, you've got to do this. We're going to do this like moon thing. And so basically what happened was that when I experienced the thing with the Holy Grail, this then activated a light bridge to the moon, and all the fairies were then like sort of fluttering along this light bridge, and then they kind of like hovered outside the moon, and then all of a sudden I saw Mother Venus appeared in the sky, and all of a sudden she made love with Father God, and I watched them make love. It was so extraordinary, and they birthed a new moon. And then the moon was holographically interfaced with the old moon. And then the fairies took over, and they all blasted in there, and they started having like the biggest party ever. And they were like, the moon's been taken over. The moon's been taken over. We had to do that. And it was all to do with Venus.
That's amazing. And the Venus, that's incredible. Yeah, I just, the Venus energy, I've just put a lot of focus on. And I know you and I are so close in birth age to like the year, and we're just a couple weeks apart from each other. So we're moving or processing or activating very much similar things, not just because of that, but yeah, Venus has been such a huge focus. And to me, the Sophionic corrections have come through the Venus transits, because the orbit of Venus forms a perfect pentagram, and astrologers and astronomers tracking it have seen that the transits, including the retrogrades, have formed this perfect pentagram. And to me, that's correcting the reversals of the inverted pentagram, what it's done to the elementals, the nucleic acids in our DNA, which are elemental, and how it's really polluted and created a lot of toxicity that we see in the outer reflection of polluted waters, chemtrailed skies, and degradation of the environment, extinction of animals, and all these things that are just undermining the fullness and abundance that the earth and cosmic forces make available to us. We have to realize that we are the shift, and we have to shift from within by clearing these toxins and pollutants. But to me, they are exacerbated or produced by our thought forms that aren't in alignment with truth. Because if we're aligned with truth, we're constantly purifying, we're constantly clearing.
Yes.
The energetic circulation is always allowing this sort of autopilot, out with the old, in with the new, like the cycles of nature. It doesn't really have to, I mean, it just by nature, you know, the seasons come, winter comes, spring comes, summer. And so within our own soul, we have the ability to do that. But the whole nature of social engineering and mind control is that we're out of sync with spirit and earth energies and our own bodies, to the point where we're always struggling, or humans very often are struggling with some sort of ailment, some sort of illness, whether it's mental, physical, it's all linked. But it really comes down to the distortions. If we're in a distortion, obviously we're going to have energy blockages. We're not going to be able to bring nutrients to certain parts of our being. Our nervous system is going to be taxed by all this bombardments of these distorted frequencies coming in. But the minute we align with the truth frequency, that greater circulation always creates this clearing. And to me, that's the leap from going from the 3D, where the personality matrix is very subject to this level of infiltration, versus stepping into the soul and living on a much deeper level, where sacred union and hierogamic union are goals in one's own inner work and what we experience in our relationships outside of the self. And then I feel that natural purification that goes on, the earth has no choice but to respond, because we are more linked and connected in oneness with the earth body, with the goddess consciousness of the planetary body, with source, 0-point unified field, and the 𝗍𝗄𝗏 divine template, than we, you know, can possibly realize. That once we really begin to switch that on, we become a force of this greater global alchemy that's able to restore and regenerate. And it's happening whether we know it or not. But the question is, are we aligned with that timeline to experience that, participate, and co-create, versus staying in the net of the matrix, which they operate and run? People shouldn't be afraid of disconnecting and dislocating themselves from it, because the abundance of the earth and the synchronicities and magic and flow that comes in the minute you let go of that is tremendous. But it's not so easy. And that's what I know missions like yours and mine help support, is the transition that people are afraid to make. But it's ultimately the most amazing reunion with your own divine powers, your healing abilities, and going through some of that discomfort in order to get back to center and your truth. And the discomfort's just letting go of attachments that never really served you anyway. So it has to not feel so daunting. It's got to be fun. The healing process needs to be fun. There's nothing fun about going to a hospital or dealing with a doctor, but what about being in nature and taking herbs and being transparent and having people that you can really, really talk to and confide in? We have a responsibility to each other to live in the highest integrity. So any thoughts about all that?
Yeah, oh my God, that was just packed with just so much information. I just have to take notes, Laura. You're such a genius. Oh my good God. There's loads. I did want to ask you one thing. I think it's really interesting what you were saying about your connection with 𝗦𝘃𝗍𝗶 when you were a child. Like, when did that start? Because I was not like a cosmic child at all. I had a really, really highly developed left brain, and I was like top of the class at maths, and I was like really good at sports, and I was like really, really super developed, like with the left brain, and the right brain. It was sort of like, for me, it kind of like kicked in when I got a bit older. But it sounds like you were quite plugged in from quite a young age.
Well, I mean, it's always there, even if a person doesn't realize it. So
Yeah.
my attention just got put onto something that everybody already holds. So even if you were maybe paying attention to this particular aspect of yourself, it doesn't mean that you weren't embodying this. I mean, or you wouldn't be.
No, but I wasn't conscious of it.
Right. Well, the consciousness of it, I mean, it's sort of like there's different levels of being conscious of something. You certainly weren't unconscious to it. So like, for example, experiencing plants and the essence and vibration that they give off is one level of being conscious of plants and their medicine, but then maybe understanding the biology of it or different ways to work with them and different recipes. Okay, maybe that's getting a little bit more conscious of what we're surrounded by. So, you know, it takes us on a journey to understand the many different levels or layers to explain it or to understand it. But if you're authentic and true to yourself, which you always have been, I mean, that's really lit up. I mean, it's a part of our makeup. It affects every gland in our body, every organ, our nervous system, everything about us, our right and left brain, the relationship between the two. And even if we're over here for a little while, I mean, our charts kind of put us in different pieces of the pie in order to give us an experience to eventually bring us into the 0 point and this greater awareness of the fullness, because 12 zodiac signs corresponds to 12 strands of DNA. Then you bring in the 13 and the 0 point, then all of a sudden it collapses all these patternings and we begin to feel more whole. We begin to switch on these dormant strands and we're not so like polarized or focusing on this particular aspect or that particular aspect. So I feel like as our lives unfold, we visit all these different quadrants based in transits or based in the map that we are given to get the full experience and also our past lives, to then also share codes with each other and different energetics with each other to help rebuild this DNA architecture. I feel I was aware of it just because I wouldn't say it was so much the 𝗦𝘃𝗍𝗶 stuff, but when the Sophia Magdalene energy was really coming in, it's like, well, who's the divine counterpart? Who's the twin flame of that? Well, obviously the Christ energy. So when I would connect with the Christ consciousness, the mother energy was always there. And then I'm like, well, this isn't something external. This is something we need to ignite within. And so those thoughts would come in or those downloads would come in. And then all of a sudden, you know, life pulls us in different areas. And, but I always felt I was wrapped up in it to the point where I felt really unable to focus or participate in school. I was kind of, you know, really like out there, and then I stopped going to school and I was just processing.
Were you wild, Laura?
Oh man, I snuck out of the house all the time. I went on road trips and left home at a pretty young age, but I was loving and stayed in touch with my family, but I was self-educated. I didn't get good grades. I did in some things later on, but no, I was just very independent, and this is what works for me, and I need to follow my own internal guidance. And I just was constantly processing a lot. I definitely was considered a wild child. My mom was just like, oh my God, help me. And when I was invited to like DC functions, when we lived in that area, she was just like, oh God, please don't talk, because I was like so mission oriented, even as a teenager. And my mom wasn't too sure like what that all meant. But yeah, I guess the awareness came in because it needed to kind of help me, because there was a lot of directed weaponry, psychotronic weaponry on me to steer me on a timeline that would have eventually maybe gotten me to Mars, because they recruited me to go off planet. So
that's interesting, isn't it?
That's why I needed that to come in to just give me that focal point.
Yeah.
And so it came in a little early, but it doesn't really matter when it comes in. And there are times where, you know, maybe it wasn't as available as I would have liked. So, you know,
wow.
Yeah, it's just the concepts needed to come in. But then, you know, then it's about living it too. You know, so my first relationship, I was all about, you know, the fairy tale and and these archetypes of, you know, the sacred union. But, you know, in high school, you're not going to necessarily achieve that. Some people do, you know, and they marry their high school sweetheart. But I remember just being really focused on that. I'm like, why are people so shallow? And just the programmings and like what has happened, and just feeling so sad and just going through so many crappy relationships since that. And then finally I'm with, you know, true love. And it's like, phew, that's like, you know what I mean? So anyway, tell us a little bit more about your journey. So you were kind of more or less, and then what would you say like the big breakthrough was that really entered you into the kind of mission that you're on right now?
Well, I will say one thing. My mum said to me, she said, well, I did know there was definitely something going on with you, Jen. She said, when you were 5 years of age, because I went to all Catholic schools, and she said, Sister Anna, my teacher, asked all the children to bring in their favourite book, or the book that, you know, had affected them. And you're going to love this, Laura. And my mum, and I bought in an adult astrology book. And they said, my mum was just like, I knew then that there was something about you which was, you know, a bit advanced kind of thing. So I definitely, and I incarnated with an astrologer. So I lived with an astrologer who was like my auntie. And so she was absolutely obsessed with astrology, like all about astrology. So my whole childhood was all about astrology. That's what I remember on that level. But I didn't realize that was kind of woo-woo or anything like that. That was totally normal to me because I grew up like that. And I was just saying, I just did a masterclass. And I was just saying that even when I was a little girl, like I used to think, how on earth did I get here? How did we all get here? And I received a download that how I got here was that my mum and dad went up to heaven and they had a chat with God, and they said, I would like to have a little girl called Jenny, and we'd like her to have blue eyes and brown hair. And then God's like, okay, here you go, here's Jenny. And then they went back down to earth. And I genuinely believe that. And my mum was not religious. She never, ever talked about God. That was my innate kind of like conclusion that I came to. Do you know what I mean? And then when I was about 7 or 8, or no, I don't know how old I was. I can't remember, but there was a time when I fell out of it and I was like, oh, I was so silly for thinking that. How silly, you know, just thinking that. So immature, so childish. And then when I had my spiritual awakening when I was 21, I was like, oh my God, I knew all along that it's all that we choose our parents and our parents choose us. And so I think it's very interesting when you look back, and it's like there's an innate spirituality. And also when because my mum got pregnant with my brother very late, there was an 11-year gap. And so she was 35, 36 when she got pregnant with my brother. And it was all this thing about, oh, he might have something wrong with him. Do you know what I mean? Because he's older pregnancy and all that bullshit that they used to say back in the day. And I said, and I used to pray every single night that my brother would not have any deformities, right? And then I had a little word with God, and I said, if my brother is going to be 100% okay and not be, you know, whatever, I'll miss praying for one night. And I missed praying for one night, and I knew that my brother was all right. So this is when I was 10. And then, so it's very interesting, like my journey with it all, because there was an innate connection. But then I went to a Catholic school, a really, really strict Catholic convent school, and they used to chat so much shit about God, like literally they would be, and I'd be like, no, I really don't think so. I just don't think God would have done that. And they'd be like, get out of the class, and they kicked me out of the classes, and I was constantly getting kicked out of RE lessons because I was like, no, I'm not having it, like, you're bullshit, do you know what I mean? So at that point, I kind of like, I really, really rebelled, because I was very, very rebellious from a very young age. And so I rebelled against my religion's notion of God. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not interested in that. God is not some bloke. And I'm not about that. I'm not about worshipping and praying to some dude with a big, like, grey beard sitting on a cloud. Like, that's not what I'm here for. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of like let go of the whole idea. And then when I was about 15, it was so amazing. I don't know if you lived in England at that time, but every week on the TV, there was this advert for this magazine called The Zodiac. And it would be a different magazine each week of like crystals, I Ching, the Zodiac, Feng Shui, you name it, the absolute A to Z of anything alternative and spiritual. And I collected it. And every week, and I had this thick, really, I was totally committed. So I obviously, you know, at age 15, I was collecting these spiritual magazines and stuff. And then I started learning astrology. I wanted to learn all about birth charts. I wanted to learn how to do birth charts. I learned all about the moon and all about I studied astrology. That was my thing. And then I got led to 𝗤𝗂𝗄𝗆𝗆, Creative Visualization, which completely changed my life. Do you know that book, Laura?
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
You've heard of it, yeah. I read that when I was 18, and that was an absolute game changer, because I connected with my higher self. She guides you on a meditation to connect with your higher self. And I connected with, and she said, oh, just ask them what their names are. And I was like, oh, I met my higher self. And I said, what are your names? And they said, and the masculine said Christopher, and the feminine said Elijah. And I was like, oh, that's my guardian angel's names, Christopher and Elijah. And then that led me to Louise Hay, and that led me down to the Susan Jeffers and You Can Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it was just then this whole, and that brought me to the Tibetan Book of the Living and Dying. And that was it, really. So I think if you look back, if you trace my life, I mean, I've always been an exceptionally intelligent person. And I think that is highly indicative of being a very, very spiritually aware. I do think they are quite synonymous.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
It's so logical. It's totally logical. Like, God made that. Like, God made that tree. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is so sacred.
Oh, yeah.
So I had that.
Yeah. And that's it right there. I mean, just there's freedom of thought and the curiosity that's not limited by belief systems, and also the events that unrolled in your life just to give you these, you know, stepping stones that guided you to this, you know, bigger expression and greater mission. And yes, I went to Catholic school in England. It was Ursuline prep school. And I was 12 years old, and I remember it was just, I never followed anything in religion either. And I remember just looking at Christ hanging on the cross. I'm like, what
are you for real
about all this? You know, I was like, I remember being 8 years old, and real quick, I don't even know if I should share this, but I've shared it before. I was in a rehearsal for our first communion, and we were all sitting in the church, and I kept looking at the Christ energy and just like, you know, what is this? And and the whole church is packed, and I have to go to the bathroom real bad. And I'm 8 years old. So, and I'd look at Jesus Christ hanging on the cross, and I said, look, if you and I have the connection I feel we have, and if we're on the same page about how weird this all is, you'll let me get away with this. Because I didn't want to like interrupt the whole thing. The priest was scary and just like on the, yeah. And I walk up and with the partner, and we're supposed to genuflect, and I took a leak right there. And I went back to my seat, and then somebody came and and I'm like, did that really happen? I felt like I was like tripping, and I just see like nobody said anything, and there was just like this, and I'm like, of course, you know, when you're 8 years old, these kind of stories are okay. If I was like 14, that'd be a little disturbing, but those kind of things were like little signs to me that this communication was going on. Just because I don't follow the church thing doesn't mean I'm any less spiritual. In fact, I feel like religion can get in the way of spirituality, and there's no judgment on anybody who follows that path, because there are so many good people that do follow religion, and it serves them well. And the way they relate to the Christ energy is a really beautiful thing. But of course, we know about the infiltrations and the imbalance of masculine and feminine, and just really like the journey of the divine feminine and Magdalene, and how that relates to the patriarchal programs, the Saturn moon matrix, and just what we see. I mean, I'm not a feminist. I don't know what I am, but I think like you know, we're advocates or here to really bring light to the divine blueprint and the journey to find twin flames. So talk to us about that, because you've written 2 books and you focus a lot on the twin flame journey. Tell us about that.
Well,
I just told that story. Oh, shoot.
That's okay. I mean, I remember when I was a little girl that I remembered that I had a twin, and I remember looking under the stars and telepathically connecting with him and saying, we're both looking at the same stars. We're both under the same stars. And that was from a very, very young age. I was deeply coded for true love from a very, very young age. And so what happened was, because it's such a huge part of my mission, and it's connected to the Magdalene mission, you know, because I think that their mission was successful like before, but the story wasn't told correctly. And I feel that we're here to tell the true story of living out the beautiful fulfillment of the love story, and it somehow making it into the public arena. So I was deeply encoded for it. And I was looking back on my journey, and I met, like when I was 16, I met this lad, and I fell very, very, very deeply in love with him very quickly. And then he ended up breaking my heart. But I realized it was because I projected the twin flame template onto him. And so when that happened, I got shattered. It was like literally I experienced the core separation of God. Do you know what I mean? And so my journey has been one of being deeply coded, but then also projecting it onto the wrong people that weren't that. And so because of that, I've actually experienced quite a lot of trauma and separation and heartbreak, because it's like a projection thing. So the first time I did it was with Darren. And I know it's such a revelation when I realized this. I was like, oh my God, light bulb moment. And then I realized I did it with Dean as well, who was my catalyst twin. And I just was so like, you're my twin. And he's like, no, I'm not your twin, Jen. I know I'm not your twin. And I was like, no, you are. And it was because it was so in me, and because he triggered my Kundalini awakening, Dean did. And I was like, how on God's great earth could you trigger my Kundalini awakening and my full third eye blasting open if you weren't my twin? And he's like, I'm your soulmate, Jen. I'm not your twin. So I went through an absolutely deeply traumatic separation from Dean, and you know that was very, very, very painful. But somehow that this is my mission, is to and it's deeply connected to the 0 point field and our own personal arrival to that place vibrationally. Like that is what, and it's almost like the twin flame is like a carrot that's kind of like dangling you home to the 0 point, really, if you, and then you arrive at the 0 point, and then it's just an absolute bonus. It's like it will come because you're no longer, there's no attachment to it, and it will come because it's your destiny. But once you arrive at the 0 point, there's no lack. You've completely and utterly transcended the entire paradigm of lack. And so you know, that's what my journey has been about. It's been about spiritual mastery, self-mastery, gaining and attaining mastery over my egoic consciousness. So I am not here to be master over anyone else apart from my ego, my egoic consciousness. And through the journey of like the, you know, us being Librans, it's very romantic. We're really coded for this romance and stuff like that. It's a good one to get us on that ascension path, you know. And I feel it has, that's what it has done, and it's brought me home, absolutely, truly. And there's so much bullshit out there about twin flames because so many people are speaking about that concept from the place where they haven't arrived in the 0 point field, and so that is transmitted in their writing and in their vibration, and so there's always this notion of sort of like something external will you know, that you will align with, where and then you'll reach the 0 point, and it's like that's not what it's about. It's about all of us arriving and understanding that is what the journey is essentially about. Because when you arrive home in the 0 point field, this is where all marriage of polarities exists and resides within you on a vibrational level. So it's a marriage of your own masculine and feminine Kundalini energies, your electromagnetic energies, your spirit and matter energies, and it's like the dissolution of duality. Duality no longer exists vibrationally within the 0 point field, and that's ultimately what it's about. It's about experiencing the marriage of yourself with God. That is ultimately what it is. And then from that place of arrival, where we arrive home in the 0 point field, then we are in that magnetic vibration of union, because as the primary axiom of creation states, as it is within, so it is without. And so as we attain that level of sacred union within our own consciousness, it is a matter of cosmic seconds before it manifests.
Absolutely. So beautifully put. And that's really the journey. I mean, when one goes into the dark night of the soul or goes into any kind of level of discomfort in removing whatever attachments, I mean, it's like breaking up with imposters or false archetypal individuals, or just the stepping stone of soulmates to get to the twin flame. I mean, these are all different levels of our own unfolding journey. And what's so interesting is the seals and fences that have been put in our DNA, and the whole concept of junk DNA is actually all these harmonic universes that contain sacred union, alchemical marriage, hierogamic union, that the very act of upgrading our DNA is experiencing this love story. But in order to experience it, we can't have attachments to things that don't serve us. So whether it's an individual, whether it's a job, whether it's a belief system, whether it's a political affiliation that polarizes us and causes sort of like divide and conquer, or maybe living through a movie, TV sort of lifestyle where it's filled with distortions and subliminals. I mean, the journey that's very authentic is to, go into, the darkness, compost those things, let go of those things, release those things, embrace the mystery with the intention of holding an alignment with truth, with higher consciousness, to plant seeds in the womb and the soil to regrow new life, because the mother womb energy is so powerful and there's so much mystery that we need to embrace. But I mean, the greater mystery has sort of a revelation of we are co-creating, we are manifestors, and we have to determine what we allow into the space in which we birth, and be conscious about what we invite in and what we need to have a boundary to. When we're in connection with the 0 point though, and the unification of polarity, we're constantly conceiving magical children and almost like generating orbs and codes and frequencies that help to neutralize dark weaponry, helps to alchemize toxicity, and really helps to clear the vibrational fields around us from these distortions and EMFs. I mean, I feel that our energetic bodies, our auric field, we can protect ourselves with shielding us, but we also emanate a vibration that can activate and dismantle this kind of weaponry. It really has nothing on us. It only can really target low frequency and people that are caught in the mind control. Once one overcomes it and realizes that they're the most advanced technology, we're untouchable by archons and reversal code technologies and harvesting and siphoning technologies that are feeding on our subpersonalities. They can't get to a truth frequency. They can't get to universal love. So these narratives and all the propaganda and all the distortions that are constantly being thrown at us just create a hospitable environment for these things to succeed in infiltrating. But once we overcome it, we begin to shatter it and take it down. So, and that's to me the path of true love and the twin flame union, that we win the war within, we find that true love within. And once we hold that frequency, we can begin to manifest it without the projection. Cause I used to do that too. And I walked around with a heart broken, like it was just pathetic, really. Totally heartbroken all the time. I'd project like, or like, we have to cultivate sacred union for the sake of the planet, like this desperation. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to go very far. And she's like, Laura,
oh, bless us.
And sometimes it would be the other way around, where somebody would be holding on and not maybe understanding maybe the way I felt I needed to be loved, but they were so called in love with me, but it was not healthy and I needed to get away. And I did everything I possibly could. But the amount of years that one can spend at trying to work on something with another is pretty wild. I mean, I think there's always going to be work, but if you're just trying to get to the basic foundation of true mutual love and respect and sacred union, it might not be the real deal.
Absolutely. And I just want to share a really inspiring story. So I found out a few years ago this kinesiologist had invented these patches to protect you from EMF protection, and my friend was raving on about it, and I was seeing him anyway, so I went all the way to Bristol to get these patches, and he's a brilliant shamanic kinesiologist, and he got me on the bed and he said, okay, I'll just test your body to see if you need them. And then he tested my body said, no, don't need it. And I said, can you see it for my son as well? And then he tested my body. He's like, no, you don't need it. And then I got off the session with him, and he's like, you're the only person that I've ever met that doesn't need the patches. He's like, what's happened? What have you done? And I said to him, well, I spoke to my DNA. I told my DNA to oscillate at a frequency whereby it was unaffected by EMF radiation. And I said, and I did it, and I was very confident. That's how I live my life, sort of confident in that. But if, there was a few little leakages, I thought that little patch might kind of cover it. He's like, no, you don't need the patches. And he said, your son doesn't need them either. So what was amazing about that was it confirmed what I knew intuitively, exactly what you said, Laura. This is so powerful. If people would just take this from this video, like, that's everything. Like, we are the Trump technology. There is nothing more powerful than us, but we have to command our inner technology to come online, and this is all connected to the so-called junk DNA. It's not junk DNA, it's just sort of offline DNA, which we have to bring back online, isn't it, Laura?
Totally and completely, and recognize the things that throw it out of tune. So when we look at the way we were raised, or the way people kind of relate to each other, just sort of on I don't like to use the word mainstream, but mainstream level, just for lack of a better term, it is so superficial. There is so much abuse, or these weird, distortions. And, people learn it from magazines. They learn it from what's modeled to them from their parents. They just, with the fact that the planetary grid network got influenced and compromised by negative reversal grid technologies to really throw off the balance of the masculine and feminine, that it's through osmosis we feel this. This free will journey gives us the empowered choice to say, wait a second, I'm not going to be the product of what's coming at me. I'm going to generate something from deep within me that will invite people to match that vibration instead of sink down just to fit in. And I always, wanted to refuse that, because I couldn't stand the superficiality and the separation of sexual energies and love. And for some that might work, great, as long as it's consensual. I'm not here to be a moral authority, and I don't consider myself an authority anyway. But yeah, it's like, okay, well, this is what's really important to me. This is sacred energy to me. This is everything to me. And but yeah, just that is to me the greater technology, is that our physical vessel is here to house the multidimensional, to house spirit, to create a house for God, goddess, and that marriage and union to exist in like a temple. Like, this is the temple that it experiences this love, and it melts away all this duality, because the judgments are gone. Even if people are making choices that we would maybe make ourselves, holding this particular love frequency in union, I feel inspires people to get out of the duality or the divide and conquer, make peace with the decisions they made in order to step into that 0 point and neutralize whatever they might have put in their bodies. I don't think anything that we've taken in, we can't heal, because there's nothing more powerful than source. And to me, that's the ultimate, timeline. And if it was enough to just use weapons on us, they wouldn't bother with the propaganda and the narratives. So, these distortions, I feel, are the root of disease. Once we get that union going, once we get that direct connect going, and we're grounded with the earth, and we're rebuilding that tree of life template, the branches open and the root system. I mean, it is this greater circulation of energy that's conceiving fruits and abundance. And so I absolutely,
wow.
And that's the tough work, because people, want to fit in, or they're afraid of what others might think. But I mean, that's such an old mentality that I remember witnessing. I still see it just from afar, just observing. But there's so many amazing switched on people that are living on a really deep level. And I feel so much the divine masculine, like so many incredible men really holding that strong union within themselves. So any thoughts on just how you've kind of noticed like, whoa, there's way more of us than one might realize, even though sometimes it gets overwhelming how many haven't yet awakened. And to me, awakened isn't like there's one truth. It's what is your truth? What is your truth frequency? What does it mean for you to be sovereign and experience this on your own terms, but in a vibration of integrity and pure heartedness? But anyway, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's like we are all micros of the macro, and there is no out there. Ultimately, there is no out there. And so it's all about us and our inner consciousness on some intrinsic level. And so I think we just have to recognize the programming. And I always say this, a program is only a program if it's unconscious. The moment it becomes conscious, it becomes a choice. So identify your programming and then make a choice, whether that is serving you as a child of God, as a beautiful, innocent child of God. Is that programming serving you? And if it isn't, you have permission to let it go.
Oh, totally.
And that permission does not come from me, that comes from you.
Definitely.
Your heart will give you permission to let that go. Because one of the things that I truly realized when I had my major enlightenment experience on top of the mountain, the first thing I realized, there was kind of like 3 simultaneous things that were flashed to me. And one of the most strongest is that if it isn't love, it isn't real. That only love is real. In the realms of eternity, it is only love that lasts forever.
Beautiful.
And all that is not love is of the Maya, is temporary.
Totally. And as a part of the experience too, when we look at just the concept of alchemy and transformation, that, or even separation, there's no true separation. We might get pulled away or distracted, or our minds might fool us into thinking that there's separation. But the minute, we become conscious, we see the program, we change our mind, we come back. It never abandons us. I mean, our immune system doesn't abandon us. God, source, goddess, earth never abandons us. But the whole idea of the matrix is to distract us so far away from it all, throw us and keep us in our lower chakras in a survival response, to where our creative energies are so bombarded with scripts that aren't true to the true story that we're able to create, that we enable the very thing that we are fighting. And then we are looping and battling something that we have to reconcile within. We can't battle an outside force without first releasing it and reconciling it within ourselves. And to me, you know, even regardless of what's taking place with galactic wars or in pantheons between different archetypes, we ultimately have to reconcile those battles within ourselves to bring those fragments back into wholeness, back into the cosmic trinity. And, you know, they each have their role as archetypal forces that might show up throughout our day, but we have to kind of know where they belong. I mean, our darker elements or inner child wounds are not here to be the skipper of the ship, but we're here to listen and support and give it unconditional love. What needs to be in the driver's seat that we need to commit to is our higher wisdom, our higher self, or at least our ability to be curious enough or brave enough to understand the challenges and obstacles in a non-victim kind of way, so that we can keep encouraging the warrior. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have our bad days, but then all these other archetypal forces, you know, can find their place. Because, you know, if the wrong archetype is being empowered to run the show, it's not going to look so good. We're all going to run into negative ego, but is negative ego really appropriate to be making life choices for ourselves? But we have to fall down and get back up again in order to learn. And that's the beauty of life, which is the greatest teacher. But what's disturbing is how much society encourages, you know, people to negate their higher wisdom, to negate these life lessons. There's no real guidance. To me, the great awakening is we have to learn to fall back on ourselves and not participate in something that is trying to feed us, project upon us, and control our self-esteem through these false reward systems that say, this is successful, this isn't. I remember just the mistreatment of me just not getting good grades. It's like, but I'm intelligent, you know, I'm going off to the library, I'm learning other things. I just don't trust what they're teaching me.
Amazing.
But yeah, it's like, oh no, learning disability, and there's all these stigmas, and
Wow.
oh, just she's so out there and just crazy and rah, rah, rah. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling off, but yeah, it's so important to be true to yourself. There's no greater teacher than your own higher guidance, and there's no greater teacher than our life experiences that will help us to bring out the best in the face of adversity versus going the opposite direction. And it's time to divorce ourselves from the matrix and embrace fully the cosmic and earthly energies, because that's going to help us to thrive.
That would be such good name for a book, Laura. Divorce yourself from the matrix. Divorce ourselves from the matrix. That would be so good. Wow.
Well, it's just like I kind of redundantly always kind of fall back on the metaphor, like, you know, about relationship. I mean, the matrix is like a narcissistic, abusive partner. Why would we want to stay in relationship with that? What does it offer us except for deception, facades, makes us feel like we're secure or taken care of or cared about. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not saying, you know, it's all negative. There's a lot of well-intentioned people, but you don't have to compromise yourself just for a paycheck. There's much, much greater abundance when you let go of that matrix that's using you and creating a sort of unhealthy dependency, when the real abundance is going to come through saying goodbye to that, to embrace the greater creative forces that are here and encoded in ways to help us to gain equilibrium, divine justice, and the ability to upgrade and become like starship consciousness and Merkaba bodies floating around and not bound to any dimension. We get to travel with
absolutely.
And so any kind of final thoughts on that, or anything else you want to share that we haven't talked about?
You know, my message to everyone is that no one's coming to save you. No one came to save me, even though I was very high level spiritual angelic. I was really, really petitioning to be saved, and God wasn't having none of it. Like, no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save me. You are it. You, through your choices, you either stay in 3D victim paradigm, or you enter the 0-point field and you enter into 5D, and you realize that the universe hands you an empty slate in every single moment. No one else can make that choice for you other than you. So that's my final message, is that we're all so powerful, and the whole major programming of the matrix has been to sort of like infuse in you this idea that there is something external or a higher authority that has permission to activate you or give you a certificate or do, and it's just not true. You are it. You are the high spiritual authority in the universe, and so you have permission to give yourself permission. Like, there, you exist within a permission field, and so this is an invitation for you to say yes and really make those choices to drop your victim story, because you can process it for hundreds and thousands of years and you'll never really get through the spaghetti mess that is your story, because we've all got a story, because this is such a, you know, difficult realm to be incarnated in. So at some point you will have to put it down, and the moment you put it down will be the beginning of your life, as it definitely was the beginning of my life, and the beginning of happiness, true happiness. Wow. So I would leave everyone with that, and I would just like to let everyone know that I will be hosting a Twin Flame container on the 1st of December till the 21st. It's going to finish on the 21st, and it's going to be focused on the physical manifestation of our twin flames. We're going to be working very, very deeply with the quantum field, with high level manifestation hacks, basically, and really deeply cracking the manifestation code, working with the quantum field, and deeply aligning with this sacred relationship. But as it's a 3-week container, it's going to be a thorough, absolutely leaving nothing left unturned exploration into all things to do with the twin flame template. So I'm very excited to be hosting that, and maybe there's someone on this call that, you know, And I've got my 12-12 transmission. That will be amazing, and that's all going to be connected to the 12th dimension and our 12th dimensional self, and our 12D, our 12 chakra system, and our 12 strand DNA system. That's going to be very, very powerful. The 12-12 transmission. So that's it, really. That's a couple of my announcements. What about you, Laura? Have you got anything exciting coming up?
Oh gosh.
You've got so many exciting things.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got projects that are always there that I'm working to complete. I have a 3-book series. It's been very difficult along the way to get these out. I lost quite a huge amount of my original book. Kind of long story, and again, don't want to be in the victim consciousness about it. So, you know, it should be done hopefully by the end of the year, and then 2 more to come. I'm on a new platform called Conscious Vitality. It's every Thursday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, live shows, censorship free, all sorts of really interesting guests. And I do a lot of the presentations. I do PowerPoints on that I used to travel and share. I'll be posting some there. And so, yeah, Conscious Vitality. And there's supposed to be a lot of in-person events next year. And I'm still navigating whether or not I'm going to attend. I don't want to fly right now. And just travel is a little bit challenging. So I'll figure all that out. But yeah, just keep up with my website, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 was amazing
Yeah.
to be with you and really empowering, because it's really important for people to remember. It's so easy to feel, I wouldn't say, guys, quiet. I wouldn't say doom, gloom, but feel just the overwhelm of what we're seeing on the planet, and how people are being affected. We got to keep our eye on a much, much bigger picture, because the grief and the heartbreak that it causes is intense. So we got to feel into that in order to release it, in order to be genuine with ourselves, but never lose sight of where this is all heading, what is capable of being healed, and the infinite nature of our soul. And let's not get overly attached to the physical plane to the point where we compromise our soul and forget about the bigger picture. We're made of magic, and the universe and cosmic and earthly forces will provide the synchronicities to help us find our soul family and mates. But cultivate that work within yourself so that you are no longer sharing energetic cords with the matrix and any of these fear narratives and any of this level of manipulation. And it'll feed into the collective, these higher vibrations. And I do feel we've reached the tipping point, and really love what you shared about the Holy Grail. And that image was so strong and so real and so true. And you hold it so beautifully and powerfully. And much love to you, Jen. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And we'll do more soon.
Love you, everyone. Please share this video.
Yes, and I'll be putting her links in the description. So just check back if you don't see them right away. I'll get them in there as soon as I can.
Yeah, I'll send them to you, hon.
Okay, sweet. Okay. Bye.